All right, Week 16, let's go. San Francisco 49ers getting set to take on the Miami Dolphins. They head back to the Hard Rock Land, a place where, of course, 2019, that brings up some tough memories. You got Kyle Shanahan, you got Mike McDaniel, you got Tua, you got Brock, and you got two teams that are kind of in the same place, Lorenzo Neal. On the outside, maybe a hint, a fraction of a percentage to make the playoffs. But both seasons really haven't gone the way that people expected.
Yeah, no question. Both teams are outside looking in and saying, please, they're going to keep on knocking, and I don't think they're going to come in. But these are two teams that I think that if you look at them, just they're right there. They're not good enough to be in. They're not really bad enough to be out of the conversation. They're just both teams that injuries, different things has happened that just haven't forwarded. The ball hadn't just bounced the right way for these two teams. So how fitting is this? Two coaches, two head coaches come from the same coaching tree, but one's been a Niner, and it's just interesting just to see how these two parallels and see how these two teams operate, especially with not a lot to play for, but just a lot of pride still on the line.
Now, the great Lorenzo Neal, as always. Evan Giddings here with you on the Kickoff Show. Big shout out to Cam Williams holding it down for us as well here at 95.7, sponsored as always by Habas Law. And look, I mean, this is a matchup that I think a lot of people, I don't know if it's as much about the game, Lo, as it is about the storylines. It's about the quarterbacks. It's about the head coaches, because there are so many similarities both this season, but also with the way that these two teams are apparently going to try and structure themselves. Obviously, the Dolphins paid a lot of money this offseason to their quarterback. The decision that everyone is kind of, I don't know, concerned about or talking about in San Francisco is, are they going to pay their quarterback? And so I first want to ask, number one, I don't think there's any such thing as a meaningless football game in the NFL. And the reason is you can always evaluate. You can always really, I think this is the time of year where I'm going to find out just who wants to be on this team next season. Because while you don't have the playoffs necessarily to play for, you play for pride. And I don't think anybody on that field, 53-man, up or bottom, is going to step onto that gridiron not knowing that they have to give their all. Trent Williams is going to be out for this game again, but Nick Bosa, other big players questionable to play. This is a game where I want to see him, strap on that chin strap. I want to see them step onto that football field and show us that even though the season might be effectively over, you still got games to play. You're a professional, and this is where you get to show that.
No question. This is where you get to showcase your ability, showcase your skills, and also just to showcase your heart, your determination. What type of mental fortitude do you present? What type of attitude are you going to say when everything's down, the chips are on the table, but you're not necessarily playing for much? You're outside the playoffs. Yes, do you have a small chance? Yeah, infinitesimal amount of opportunity to get in the playoffs. But I want to see how you play now. I want to see, are you coming off the ball? Are you finishing plays? Are you running to the ball? Are you saying, hey, look, I'm going to play because my name, my reputation's on the line. So, yeah, I think these are two teams that both these coaches are saying, hey, look, guys, we may not get in. Let's not talk about that. Let's just go and play football. Let's go play the kind of football that we want to see you play, that we think that you're accustomed to playing. And I think both these two teams feel that they failed, and they both feel that they've underachieved this year. Miami Dolphins, man to a man, they're like, hey, man, we should have been in the playoffs. You can't tell me that the Niners haven't felt the same way. So you have two teams that says we should have played better, and this is not who we are.
Well, and you can make the cases for similar reasons. The Niners, I think, early in the year when they were close to whole, they had some opportunities and blew them. But since the injury wave and a tidal wave of them have hit the Niners, that's kind of become the story of their season. And while the Dolphins maybe haven't dealt with as many injuries as the Niners or the offseason shenanigans that went down, they're a team that has been largely dependent on the health of their quarterback. And Tua Tagovailoa, because of concussion issues and stuff that is, you can't really prevent it. It's going to happen in the game of football, but that's where their season went off the rails. They have won 4 of their last 6 games, but it was a too little too late situation. So both the Niners and the Dolphins have been hurt by injuries, but just kind of at different, more impactful positions.
And key injuries. You have to realize, we talk about Debo and you talk about the receiving core, and now Jennings clearly has stepped up to be the number 1 receivers. But you think about Brandon Ayuk, how big of a loss that was for this Niner team, that everyone's saying, hey, this team can't win a Super Bowl without Ayuk. He was a huge pillar of this team, even though he wasn't playing great, even though he didn't have the type of games we thought that he was going to have and what the fans merit him to have. But you look at that was a huge loss. And then, like you just alluded to with Tua, you think about when Tua was this team played at a higher level, and now when Tua's there, you see the way that they rise and fall with Tua. I don't think this team rises and falls with the quarterback with Brock, but he is a main focus point on this team because you had him, you still had him, you didn't have your big time receiver, and what happened. So it's interesting just to see how do you put a value on these guys. What do they mean to their team? You look at the Miami Dolphins. Tua's out. It was a huge drop-off. They couldn't hardly win. Tua comes back. Like you said, they go 4-5. Brock's not out, but Brock's, he's been injured, but he's been fighting through things. But losing his receiver, not having his tackle, was he able to transition the team and make this team better? Tua, we got to say, has. Brock, I'll leave it to you.
Well, and I think that's what everyone is wondering. And, someone, I think it was Ross Tucker, and, he works with Odyssey as our Odyssey NFL insider. He brought it up earlier in the week that this idea of Brock is in the Tua Tagovailoa category. And what he meant by that was if you basically just said, hey, Brock, you're a free agent and you can go get whatever money you want. In the NBA, it's called restricted free agency, where you're allowed to go seek a contract and then your team is able to match it. If there was something similar in the NFL, what kind of money would last summer Tua have commanded, and what type of money this offseason would Brock Purdy have commanded? And his point was it would be something similar. If Tua, you can go find $55 to $60 million, God love you, go take it.
Right.
Because you can't find it here.
But that's not disrespect.
No.
And that's the thing where I think when you look at Dak Prescott and you say, hey, look, happy he got paid. You had a Jerry Jones, the owner there, that said, hey, we're going to take care of Dak. We're going to do this. So you paid this guy $62 million a year. Now, the 49ers, it doesn't behoove them to follow this trend. Because if you think about the Dallas Cowboys and you think about Michael Parsons, athletic, one of the best pass rushers, maybe not his flaw, maybe not great against the run, but it's going to be hard as hell for them to sign him because the money you spent on your quarterback.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. I'm not saying, and I don't think you're saying, that Tua doesn't deserve to get paid. We're not saying that Brock Purdy doesn't deserve to be paid. You just, and hey, we wasn't saying that Brandon Ayuk, because I don't want people to think, oh, he's just hating on Brock or he's just hating on Trent. No. As an organization, you have to get to a point where you can roll up your sleeve and say, we love you. We love what you bring to the table. We want you here. We want you to be a Niner, but this is what we can do. And if you can't, and guess what? And if you're not happy, we give you permission to go out and find it elsewhere. That's a good business, being a good business person. That's a good business decision instead of saying, I don't care. I'm going to do whatever I can do to keep a player here. And now I have holes in my ship other places.
Well, and what I wonder, what I wonder about this offseason is if Brock Purdy is going to look around and make a decision that's both good for him, but also good for him in the scope of the team. Because if you succeed, if you win, you get paid. If you don't succeed, if you don't win, people lose their jobs.
Right.
And so if Brock Purdy has enough to look himself in the mirror and say, this is what I need to be successful. I can make generational money. I can make wealth for myself 3 generations from now, and I can make money that I've never imagined before in my life. However, I can win as well and put myself in a better position to make more money down the line. So it can be selfish, but also within, again, the context of the team, of that whatever I need, this team, the Niners, can provide it for me if I do them a little bit of a favor. That's the question that I wonder if he's able to answer, or his agent wants to answer, because an agent's job is to go out and get the most money for their client, to get the most money for them. You know what I'm saying? So, but Brock Purdy, I wonder if he's the kind of guy that can look around the league and say, this is what quarterbacks have to deal with when they make the kind of money they do. I've been successful when I've had this kind of surrounding cast, and I have a better job to keep it. I don't know if you want to call it a discount, making but doing something that is both beneficial in the short term and the long run, not just for the team, but for you. If you really say that this is how I can be the best version of myself.
Right. I think you're absolutely right. And I think Purdy's going to have that opportunity. And guess what? Kudos to this man for what he's done. We know that he far surpassed what he did as a rookie contract. The guy has been absolutely amazing. Now it's like, okay, put your money where your mouth is. Show me how much you love me. Show me what kind of discount. What did I do? I outperformed my contract. Pay the guy. No one's saying not paying, but you got it as Brock. It seems like Brock is that type of a guy that's going to say, this is not about me. This is about me trying to win a Super Bowl. This is about me, about my legacy. Is it about money? Is money everything? Then go find it. But if it's not, you got to think about some type of compromise for the good of the 49ers whole organization.
Well, and in regards, because I do think timing is a big part of this. For example, if this is the kind of season that happened before Brandon Ayuk was eligible for a contract, I don't know if he would get paid the money that he did. My point is, the Niners were coming off of a massive, big winning season. They got to a Super Bowl. Yes, they fell short. But in those kinds of years, people get rewarded. Like I just said, when you win, you get rewarded with contracts and with money. Brock Purdy's in a position now where, and he was asked this earlier this week, Lo, I want to play it for you. He was asked to assess his performance this season, not in the context of a contract, but just in terms of football. Here's what he had to say.
Well, it's the thing about it, I know you're trying to get that way. You pull in that piece about Brock, what he had to say.
Oh, there we go.
I think there's some plays out there that I'd love to have back, and wish I could have been better for my team and for myself. But at the same time, I feel like there's been some growth in my game that has happened, and really just I think like leadership wise with this team and sort of stepping up and when the team needs it, sort of just being a guy that they can hear from. And in the past, it's I've been sort of particular about when I speak and waiting for the right moment. But this year, it's been more than it has, and so I don't know. I feel more comfortable in who I am, but also like I think I need to get better and get back to playing a chip on my shoulder, and like it was my first 2 years of every game, every down, trying to prove to myself that I'm the guy for this team and I'm capable of doing it. That's sort of just been the case this year with some moments. Got to learn from that.
I agree. Yeah, I mean, I think he has made strides.
Huge strides.
And it's been with his legs. I think there's been a lot more off the field that we haven't seen from Purdy this year. And he does look like the kind of guy that's also beginning to come into his own as, I don't know, a potential face of the franchise. But that said, the team's 6-8. And at the end of the day, that's what people are going to remember this season for. Not the strides that Brock Purdy may or may not have taken. And I'm glad he feels that way. But you are what your record says you are. And so this season has been a disappointment.
Yeah, and so we get to see, because I held on those last words where he says, I wish I could rewind, but you can't. And he goes, I would like to be more assertive. I'd like to take over and play with the fire that I did 2 years ago. Well, that's the case. And that's why I get to see what this young man can do today and what he gets to do next week. So, when you hear a guy talk like that, hey, now I want to see the action because he understands what he needs to do. And I love this guy because he still goes out there and he plays and he gives it his all. He has 2 weeks to step up, put a stamp on his performance in spite of not having his best weapons, not having McCaffrey, all the other guys that he doesn't have. He still has an opportunity to go seize the moment, to take this team, regardless of who he was playing with, and make them better.
Well, and this week, again, look, he's going to be without his left tackle. Trent Williams is going to miss a fourth consecutive game. He's going to have Deebo Samuel out there, Juwan Jennings, George Kittle. He is going to have players on offense that can help him succeed. And Brock Purdy, look, last week did not play particularly well. This is a player that I think so far this season has been, a little bit up and down. But it was a bit frustrating, Lo, not necessarily just Purdy, but really the entire team coming out as flat as they did on Thursday night against the Rams. I know that there was some poor conditions. There was rain that impacted things. But overall, 6 points in essentially a must-win game against a division opponent, I think that's where a lot of people are going to leave this season.
Inexcusable. If you are a dominant and a big-time quarterback, when have you seen Josh only put up 3? When have you seen Mahomes only put up 3? When have you seen Joe Burrow only put up 3? When have you seen Lamar Jackson only put up 3? So see, this is and kind of when I'm looking at my quarterbacks, I have that group of guys that I think that are the elite. When you say, who's those guys that you're saying, hey, they deserve the two, whatever those March, whatever that north is of, then that's that cream of the crop. Then you have that next tier. That next tier, you look at guys like Stafford, guys like you would say Herbert, and Herbert close to that being he's on the fringe of those two, him and Stafford. So I look at those guys and say, okay, now you have that second kind of tier, and maybe it's you look at Philadelphia's quarterback. You throw him in that second tier. You think about who else is in those tiers. You have to throw Jared Goff. So you look at Stafford, Jared Goff, those type of guys, Herbert, that second. And then, so where is Purdy? Is it that second, or is it that third tier? That third tier.
I mean, for me, he clearly has the ability with the proper team to be in that second tier. And I think that's where he was last year. He performed like an MVP candidate last season. He was extremely good, but everything was going right for him. And that's why this year it's not a throwaway season by any means. Every season counts. But I do wonder what it's like, Lo, when you step into a situation that is perfect, which is made for what you do, and you don't even know it yet. I mean, Purdy had to come off the bench. I think people forget the first team he ever played was the Miami Dolphins, when he had to step in for Jimmy Garoppolo, who got hurt, and he hit the ground running. And that was about 2.5 years ago. So Brock Purdy has always had a situation tailored for him. What I think happened this season is because of injuries, because of maybe some hold-ins, holdouts, because guys have taken a step back, because he's been inconsistent. This is really the first season, probably since I would say maybe he became a starting quarterback in college, where he is at a disadvantage, just as far as the talent on the field, where he isn't playing always with the best team. And that takes some adjusting to. And I don't think he's done a particularly great job of adjusting to it over the course of this season. But now having a full offseason to prepare, knowing that, all right, you might not have McCaffrey for 16 games. You might not have Brandon Ayuk for 16 games. Deebo Samuel looks like he's taken a step back. George Kittle will be a year older. Your offensive line is a little bit up and down. There are things that he's going to have to adjust to, and I wonder if now Brock Purdy's the kind of player that can look at this entire season and say, all right, this is what the reality of the NFL is. And the year that we had last year where we almost won the Super Bowl, that's the exception. That's the outlier, because you're not often going to be playing with that kind of team.
No, you're not. And that's the thing. Like you said, if you give Purdy the weapons, this guy, he could win a Super Bowl. If someone makes a one block offensive tackle or guard in the Super Bowl, it's a touchdown. They win this game. So I don't think you blame Purdy. I'm not blaming Purdy for, them not winning a Super Bowl or them not being, because that Super Bowl, the way he did with his legs in the Super Bowl game, getting out of trouble, making things happen when it's nothing was there, was unbelievable. So I'm not taking or diminishing anything that Purdy's done. I'm just trying to let you understand there's tiers to this quarterbacking. And for you to just aimlessly go out there, because I think Dak Prescott's in the third tier.
Yeah.
But he got paid. I think when you look at Dak, you think about a Geno, you think about certain guys, you say, okay, here's these guys that are in a tier. When you look at what, and this, like you guys said, you had, I forget the name you said you guys had.
Oh, Ross.
Ross talked about, hey, look at the Miami Dolphins and look what they have in Tua, and think about what did Tua, was Tua a bigger loss for the Dolphins? Did Tua raise their level up higher than what Brock did this year? When you think about the talent, about the running backs, the line, compare these two, and you're only as good as what you did. What have you done for me lately? You know that. So when you think about that, when you look at it in that sphere, who meant more to their team this year between those two guys?
Tua.
And that's the truth. And it's not, and it's no slight on Brock, but can Brock, and I always talk about the type of players and two type of players, the thermostat and thermometer. Your kid's sick, you put a thermometer in the mouth and bam, it just measures. Hey, but it's cold in the house, you turn up the thermostat, it heats it up. When it's hot, you turn it down and it cools it off. What kind of player is Purdy? Is Purdy those in between? Because we know Josh Allen, he's a thermostat type of player. We know Patty Mahomes, he's a thermostat type of player. You know Joe Burrows, he is a thermostat type of player. Lamar Jackson, these guys, they friggin' can go up, down. They can take over a game and be prolific. I just don't know if Purdy is that type of quarterback. That is he going to have? Can he have a game like that? Yes. But is he consistent, and does he have what it takes? Can he throw the ball, the deep ball like that? Can he or is he limited? So that's the only thing I'm saying. I think the guy's great. I think he's a good quarterback. I think he's deserved to be compensated. I just don't want this team to go out there and do what they did for Dak Prescott and overpay a guy. And now I don't say necessarily overpay, but pay beyond your means. And now you have too many holes that you need to fill.
Well, the place the Niners are kind of stuck between for me is this area of believing that they can still contend because they have a lot of good players on their roster. I know a lot of them got hurt this year. Some of them have gotten older, but they still have a lot of talent. And this idea that if you pay a quarterback, you're kind of locking yourself into whatever their ceiling is. And the difference to me between Brock Purdy and Dak Prescott, or even Tua for that matter, is Brock Purdy's age. I mean, he's only 25 years old. So do you believe that he can get any better? That's the question I think the Niners have to ask themselves, because if you've already seen the best of this guy, I'm not sure that's something that you reward with the top of market money that he might command. But if you believe that he can get better, or that he's made enough strides this offseason to show that he can kind of combine what he learned off the field with what he did on the field last year, then there might be something. But to me, I mean, Brock Purdy, he's played like a third, borderline fourth-tier quarterback this season, if we're just being honest. I mean, they're 6-7, or he's 6-7. They're 6-8 as a team. But 15 touchdowns, 9 interceptions, a sub 100 quarterback rating. Like, I don't think Brock Purdy has been anything to write home about this year. The issue that I find, low, and it's more with the league than it is Purdy, it's that it's the one position it feels like in sports where the best player doesn't, where the best player doesn't make the most money, or a player that is just due up, that's next up, is going to get top of market money. Like, I understand why Justin Jefferson got the largest non-quarterback contract in the history of football. He's the number one wide receiver.
Right.
I understand why Nick Bosa a couple of years ago got the money that he's the number one defensive player.
Exactly.
I do not understand why the Lawrences, the Tagovailoas, the Prescotts, and now it appears potentially the Purdys are the guys that continue to push the ceiling of that position monetarily.
It makes it unsustainable.
Yeah.
Because what's what you said, when you get those guys, and that you're not sliding these guys, you're just saying, once you do that, now when the big guys get up, it's like, where do you go from there? And I know it's just like, okay, like you just alluded to, hey, you understand why certain positions get paid, but this is a position that it's just like, hey, next one's up, they're just going to get paid. We're just going to reset the market because that's how you do it. That's not good. That's not good business.
No, I don't think so. And it hurts your team. I think it hurts, I don't know, just the way that I think also the average fan kind of looks at football, low. It's like, if we remove ourselves from the media space and you're just watching football today, I have no clue who the best quarterback is, because again, typically you're paid based on production, you're paid based on what you've done. And to his credit, has had a few very good seasons when he's been healthy, he's been good. Justin Herbert has obviously been very good, but those two players were in the same draft class as Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow's clearly the best quarterback.
Right.
And he is not always going to make the most money between those three guys. It's mind-boggling. And so I don't know if it's, for Niners fans, I think they're in the same position that we are, that they love what Brock has done, and they think he's a really good quarterback. But really good quarterbacks, or just good quarterbacks, don't deserve to be the number one paid player in the sport.
Agreed. And that's what has to change. And it's going to be interesting just to see what happens with the 49ers. Are they going to hold court and say, look, we love you. This is where we're willing to go. And we're not going to go past this number. And if not, you got to let this guy do what's right. And you got to say, we're going to do what's right, brother. We're going to let you have the free market. And if someone gives you an offer and we can't touch because this is what we can afford, because we know we may be losing Debo, We know that Trent is getting older. He's 37, going to be 30. You have a guy that how much longer can he play at that high level? You have to address, your offensive guard. You have a lot of things that you have to address this offseason in the trenches. You have defensive front that that's not been very solid, and you have missed on draft picks. So you're going to have to address a lot of issues and a lot of holes that you have. How is this team and this organization going to minimize and be able to captivate what they need to do as far as when it comes to spending to get the right people in this building to try, if the window's still open, to try to earn another championship or at least play to take that we have a chance to win a Super Bowl? Because right now, you don't have enough.
No, not right now. But as of what happens in 2 hours, the Niners will play the Miami Dolphins. Both teams are 6-8. The Niners, of course, coming off their loss last Thursday night to the Los Angeles Rams. The Dolphins, meanwhile, had their season close to come to a close. Still technically not eliminated, but they lost to the Houston Texans last weekend. They are also 6-8 as a result. We're going to talk about it more when we come back on the other side here on the pregame show presented by Habas Law. If you've been wrong, Habas Law will fight to make it right. Call 1-800-INJURE or visit habaslaw.com. Lorenzo Neal alongside Evan Giddings. Back with you after this 95.7 The Game. All right. We all right back there, man? Oh, my gosh. I mean, usually it's, we get in here to studio for the pregame show talking about football, talking about the Niners. It's easy going. It's holiday time.
Right.
Cam's out here sprinting like he's about to run a go route.
Struggling out there, baby. Cam got a lot going on, man. Cam, when you demand, everyone demanding on you, he's getting pulled on in every direction because Cam makes it happen.
Well, yeah, I mean, speaking of demand, it's like we're trying to figure out what the Niners are in demand of. Are they in demand of a quarterback? Obviously, they take on the Miami Dolphins later on today at 1:25. We got you right here on 95.7 The Game here on the Kickoff Show. My thing, and off the conversation we had at our first segment, Lo, it feels to me like the way the Niners are kind of trending, I do think this is an appropriate opponent because to me, the more I think about it, if the 49ers decide to pay Brock Purdy top of market money, if they decide to basically do what every other team has pretty much done, which is when their young quarterback has success, steps up, and gets to his time to sign his contract, they just pay him. It feels like the Niners could be in a position where they look a lot like the Miami Dolphins in a couple of years, which is a pretty good football team. Knocking on the door with a good head coach. You can win double-digit games, but I don't know if anybody believes that the Miami Dolphins are a team that is going to be able to make noise. Now, the one difference that the Niners have is they play in the NFC. The Dolphins, of course, got to deal with the Bills, the Chiefs, the Ravens. There's a lot more of those top-tier, tier one quarterbacks that we talked about in the first segment in the AFC. How does the fact that the Niners they play in maybe a little bit of a weaker division, that they play in a side of a conference that I think lends itself more to them reigning supreme like they have the last half decade?
Yeah, I think that the division has gotten weaker, but I think the Niners, when they were in their heyday, year or so ago, 2 years ago, and all the things that they did, you have to realize they were playing some good teams. I mean, the Rams were on top of their game. Seattle didn't just fall off the cliff. So this was a very formidable division. I look at a guy like Sam Darnold as I digress. Think about Sam Darnold. Sam Darnold, is he a great quarterback or is he playing on a good team, a great team? I think it's the latter.
Yeah.
I think he's got one of the best receivers in the football that you talked about. He's got an amazing defense, a great defensive coordinator, got great players on offense and defense, good running game, all those things. And now look what Sam Darnold's doing. Here's a guy that was darn near ran out of the league. Couldn't darn near get a sniff, starting job, came here last year and backed up. And all of a sudden, now he's one of the best quarterbacks in the league. Now all of a sudden he's up for MVP. Come on, bro. It's the talent that you have around you. So the Niners, the Niners team right now, to me, is not about quarterback. It's about building in the trenches. It's about getting right in other places. You're not right. This team is not right in other places. Think about Sam Darnold. Here's a guy they're talking about. Look at this resurgence of Sam Darnold. Guy's probably going to make $25, $30 million a year. He is not. They're not going to offer this guy $63 million. They might go to the NFC Championship game. So now all of a sudden you give him $63 million because it's the quarterback position.
Yeah,
that'd be foolish, bro. That's why I don't understand, and I'm trying to just make reason out of this because I'm for Brock. I love Brock. I love the way he works. I love how hard he is. I love that he's a leader. Brock's also limited as a quarterback.
Sound like something from Bikini Bottom right there.
Yeah. He was feeling me.
No, look. You're not saying anything that I disagree with. There's no doubt. I mean, there are my only thing though is it's hard for me, Lo, when I look around the league because there are a lot of good quarterbacks, but at the same time, it feels like it's hard to find one. I mean, there are teams, for example, the Washington Commanders are on right now. They're playing the Philadelphia Eagles. The Commanders have not had a good quarterback before Jaden Daniels. You got to go all the way back to Kirk Cousins. And even he was a quarterback that didn't take him anywhere. Right. But he was their last best quarterback. So my point is, and they kind of were in the same situation that the Niners are with Brock. Obviously, they drafted RG3 to be their guy. Injuries prevented that from happening. Kirk Cousins steps in, and the Commanders basically said, all right, we're not going to pay you. We're going to franchise tag you. And he chose to go to Minnesota. They allowed him to do that. And they've been stuck without a quarterback for it feels like a decade. And now they finally found one in Daniels, and he looks to be a real guy. But my point is, just because you don't have a great quarterback, it can get a lot worse. And so that's my only fear for the Niners if they choose to play hardball with this kid and Brock calls their bluff and it ends up not going the way that they wanted to, is that, I mean, you can suffer for that.
I don't think you play hardball, but at the same sense, you can go play Brock $60 million here, and you're not necessarily going to get to the playoffs next year because you don't have enough right now in the cupboard. So go ahead and do that, and you will set this franchise back another 4 or 5 years if you overplay the quarterback. He deserves to be paid. I don't think you're playing him hardball. It's not playing hardball. It's just like, look, this is what we can do. This is as far as we can go. What is Tua getting? Look up Tua's salary. I want to see what Tua's getting. I want to see what some of these guys are getting.
$52 million per year.
Tua's getting $52 million a year. I don't think that he's worth. I mean, now, but we talked about what he meant to this team. It meant a little bit more. But so you paid a guy $52 million, and what has it got you? Do you want to go down? Are you going to follow these tracks? If you want to just say, I just want to compete, I want to be able to compete, is that what you're looking for? And I think this Niners team and the organization wants more. I think it's about winning Super Bowls. And I think that Brock Purdy can help them get to the Super Bowl, and he can help them win a Super Bowl, but he's going to need more help.
Well, and I think you hit the nail on the head. It's like the biggest thing to me about this Niners season that's been so alarming is it feels like, I mean, we saw at the end of last year, the defensive line was getting whipped around. I mean, just tossed right and left. Teams were running on them, especially in the postseason. In that first half in the NFC Championship against Detroit when they gave up 170 on the ground, that was alarming. But this year, It's been on both sides of the ball. I mean, it hasn't, at least last year, the offensive line was, I know they had a couple of key breakdowns in the Super Bowl, but for the season, they were pretty serviceable. They did a really good job of creating run lanes for Christian McCaffrey. They kept Brock Purdy upright. This year, and he talked about it earlier this week about how he's had to kind of, mold his game, elevate and kind of transform it. To me, that's because he's had to run for his life. Right. I mean, he's been forced to show us that he can run and use his legs, but you don't want your quarterback to be running all the time. That's one of the knocks people have on Lamar Jackson. So my point is that the Niners, they got to figure out where their bread is buttered. And to me, it's always been at the line of scrimmage. The offensive line has been sometimes not the biggest names, but they've played their game. But the D-line low, I mean, that was the identity of this football team when Kyle Shanahan got here. And I don't know how they addressed it in a single offseason, but the one thing that has frustrated me the most about watching this football team this year is that they cannot stop someone when they need to. And that has to change.
It does. And here's what you have to realize. When you think about guys in this league, when you say, hey, you don't want your quarterback to have to run, and you know what? That notion's gone. That's not the way of the NFL any longer. Yes, you do. And can Purdy do it with consistency and not get injured? And those are things that you have to question, and you have to wonder, can this guy play at that level? Because you look at what happened when Denver's got a young quarterback. He's big enough, physical enough that he can still take off, and you have to run. Look at the Chargers, who they got in Herbert. Mm-hmm. Got to take off. He's got to run. You go around this league, and you show me it's very few and in between that your quarterback that doesn't have to run 3, 4, sometimes 5, 7 or 8 times a game. Yes, Lamar Jackson does it a lot more because that's the type of offense that it's built around. But you think about, a lot of these quarterbacks around this league, you have to run, and you have to be pretty efficient.
Oh, it has to be a part of your game. And that's why I think, the biggest difference to me between 3 years ago or 4 years ago and, for example, Aaron Rodgers now is he's 41 and he doesn't have the ability or the mobility to evade like he used to.
No.
And the Jets certainly haven't done him any favors. That offensive line has been pretty garbage since he got there, but he's been able to play effectively enough, not to help them win more than 4 games, but I don't know necessarily if it's been all on him. I think he's had a pretty decent year. And there's going to be some quarterbacks out there in this offseason that are available if the Niners want to try and maybe force Brock Purdy to play under that 4th-year, $1 million deal he has next year. If they don't want to give him the money up front, Where are you at with the possible decisions? And I don't know if you want to call them flyers, but Darnold might be out there. Rodgers might be out there. Kirk Cousins might be out there. There's always rumors about quarterbacks being disgruntled or teams not being happy with their quarterbacks. Do you think the Niners have already made the decision? Do you think they'd be open, or should be open, I should say, to maybe trying to introduce a different signal caller?
Oh, I definitely got to pay him. He's got to get paid. It's just like we just alluded to. You're just not going to go crazy and overpay this guy. But I think you definitely have to pay what he's done. You have to pay him. But if Aaron Rodgers wanted to come and back up or be there I'd totally, take a flyer on him. I just don't think that you can sit here and play Brock Purdy $50, $60 million a year and think that you're going to be competitive because you missed on some of these defensive linemen. You got to get better in the trenches. This team, you talked about it earlier, they've been bad against the run. They're offensively inconsistent running the ball. Their offensive line has been as good as it has been in the past. Defensively hasn't been good as it's been in the past. So you're going to have to invest into the trenches this year. So I just don't know if this team is going to be able to pay this. It's that I wouldn't go over 50. 50 would be the absolute max a year because I'm trying to win Super Bowls and I'm trying to get a better team. And guess what? Brock Purdy will too. If not, you got to let him try the open market.
Well, and one thing you also mentioned was the limitations. And some of it is physical. Some of it appears to be related to conditions. I mean, Brock Purdy has not played well when it has been wet. Exhibit A was Thursday night against the Los Angeles Rams when he completed 50% of his passes, threw a pick, didn't eclipse 200 yards, and did not throw a touchdown. He was asked about that earlier this week, Lo. Here's what he had to say about if the elements affect his play.
Any person that's throwing an object in, the rain, it makes it wet. The grip isn't as good. I think for me, it's been more about learning, how to change the motion a little bit and throw differently in the rain. You can't just get back there and be as violent as you normally are and ball can come out and all that kind of stuff. So it's like it comes down to, sort of learning how to handle those kind of environments and finding a way to complete the ball, move the chain, stay on the field, put up points. Those are all things, man, that you sort of just got to learn as you go. And so if I see bad weather for a possibility in a game, I don't freak out or anything. It's just like, all right, how can I, be better and learn from, games that I've played in those kind of, situations or environments. So that's how I look at it. And for me, I can play in it.
Well, he may not be freaking out about it, but it feels like everyone else is the moment that they see any sort of rain on the radar and Brock Purdy's under center. I mean, the numbers are the numbers. Like, I understand that you're not going to be at your best potentially when you got to grip a tough ball and throw it through the rain and sleet and snow and all the rest. But you have to be able to find a way to win those kind of games. And so far, that's where my disconnect with Purdy in that quote is.
Yeah, but he said, you heard him. He goes, man, anybody who goes in rain, it's tougher to get a grip. It's tougher to do those things. I agree to disagree. I agree because it is tougher to feel the ball. Yes, the ball can be a little heavier because it's a little wet, all those elements that go into it. If I throw the long ball, maybe I'm taking 2 yards off my throw now because of the air and because of it's wet, don't have the grip, so maybe 2 to 3 yards. But if you can't necessarily already throw the long ball, what does that do to you? So I think that it affects guys differently. You look at Josh Allen, the way this guy throws the ball in that weather, it doesn't affect him as much. So there's a lot of guys, it affects everyone, but it just doesn't affect everyone as much. So there's different degrees, and that's the part that I disagree with Purdy, because he's saying it affects everyone. Yeah, it affects them, but it affects everyone differently. And that's the thing that you have to look and say, hey, look, we're going to have some of these games. How is my quarterback going to play in these conditions?
And how is he going to be able to find a way, if he needs to kind of dial it back? Like, the other part about it, too, is I do think that because Brock has had to do more this year, obviously, than last year, you've begun to see that sort of gunslinger that I think he had in college, but I don't know what kind of quarterback Brock Purdy sees himself as. If he's a guy that wants to be the gunslinger, because to me, that's very dangerous. If you don't have a big arm or a big frame or an ability to put the ball into tight windows consistently, then you putting that ball in a danger zone, that can be detrimental to your football team. And so what I also wonder is if Brock Purdy is the kind of guy to say that I got to do it myself, because I personally, that's not the guy I want to see for this team.
Yeah, and I think it is very tough and dangerous when you're saying, hey, this is the kind of weather. Is this a guy I want to see in these elements? I just think that you have to look at it and be like, hey, look, I got to own it. I got to own who I am and certain things. And that's what I love about Brock. He doesn't back down from any confrontation or any, situation. He's going to be as honest as he can, and sometimes to a fault. Brock Purdy has deserved and has worked his butt off. He deserves a contract, and he needs to be taken care of. And the 49ers are going to take care of this guy. The biggest thing, I think, the biggest disconnect is like you're just saying how much and how far they're willing to go. It's not playing hardball with this guy. It's not saying we're going to play hardball, we're going to give him a low bar offer. No, you're saying this is what we're willing to do, because I just think that you're in a situation, if you're the Niners, because I think you need so many, I would if you can't find a deal, you got to let him see what the market would tell him, because how much is it? Do you think that Brock in the back of his mind wonders, hey, how would I do in another system? Do you think that Brock in another system, not a Kyle Shanahan-driven system, what kind of success could he have? If you think if he's in Miami, would he be having more success? Does Miami have more weapons? Certain places, and that's what I think he has to go through, that process, that evaluation with himself, to say, if I do hit the market, who is it? Is it going to be the Raiders? Atlanta's got a guy in the first round. It probably won't be them, or it's going to be a cheap deal. Is it going to be New Orleans? Where am I going to go? And then how much, and it's going to be predicated on how much they pay you, how much leeway are they going to give you? If you struggle, if you're Brock, are you going to be one just like Kirk Cousins in 1 year of this deal? I'm not saying he's going to play that bad, but is it going to be a 1 year deal and then he's out of there? So if he goes on the market, and I think that's another thing that we're not talking about. What if? Does he think about if he goes somewhere else? What would the market dictate? How much is this predicated on Kyle Shanahan's system?
Well, and how much also, if he did go somewhere else, hypothetically, how long would you be able to stay there? Like Kirk Cousins, reports are this morning that he's going to get released by the Falcons, or they're going to try to trade him. Basically, he's not their quarterback anymore. I mean, they benched him for a rookie in a playoff hunt. I mean, the Falcons are not eliminated. They are knocking on the door of winning the NFC South, and they chose to go to a first-year signal caller because Kirk Cousins has not played very well. And I don't know if the system is great for him. I don't know if he's at the end of his career. It could be a combination of both. My point is, Brock Purdy also has to ask himself, if he goes somewhere else, how long is his career going to last?
Right, because is the coach bought in? See, you can get bought in by the front office, and the front office, like, they bring in Kirk Cousins and like, man, we can be in love. And then the coach says, this isn't my guy. The front office can bring in a lot of guys, and they can they can hold you off for a year or two, but then the head coach say, hey, this guy can't get it done. I'm going in a new direction. Let's talk about a team that saw him play on Thursday night. Denver Broncos. Who did they have at quarterback? Front office gave him his own locker, all the stuff they did. Let Russ cook. All those great things for Russell Wilson. What happened when a new coach said, this isn't my guy? People said, look how you can treat a veteran of this many years, what Russell meant to the league, and look how Sean Payton was able to do what he wanted to do because he was the new sheriff in town. Brock Purdy, yes, 49ers going to treat you differently. And that's one thing. When you're a hometown guy and people love you, the fans love you, they know what you've done, the coaching staff love you, you have a good situation here. I don't think Brock wants to leave. No one's saying he wants to leave. I just think you got to find a reasonable number that he can live with and say, oh, I should take my chances, because I'm telling you, sometimes bird in hand is better than two in the bush.
Well, and I don't think that Purdy's been the biggest issue for this Niners team whatsoever. And again, as they get set to take on the Miami Dolphins at 125, and you can also catch Overtime with Mark Grandy, Kyle Madsen, and Sterling Bennett after every single Niners game right here on 95.7 The Game. This is the Kickoff Show with Evan Giddings and Lorenzo Neal. My thing with the Niners is they have to be careful of not setting themselves down a path that they can't necessarily get out of. I think one of the reasons why they have been so flexible in having a lot of players is, yes, they've had cheap labor at quarterback, but they've also done, I think, a pretty good job of understanding when a player needs to go and when to get off of a guy. For example, I feel terrible for him because he's undergone a lot of tragedy, but I do think that this is the last season for Charvarius Ward. They brought him in a couple of off seasons ago. He's given them some spectacular play. He was an all-pro corner last year, and now it looks like this might be the end of his marriage with San Francisco. I think they've done a good job of understanding when guys are not ready to compete or not ready to give you a high production anymore. Brock Purdy is ideally entering his prime, and so I think that's why they want to reward him. But the other decision they have to make is what guys on this team are they looking to keep around, or are they looking to pay? Do you want to pay a Talanoa Hufanga, or do you feel confident that a Malik Mustafa or a Jair Brown is going to be able to fill that position next season? So as much as they have to make decisions about Brock Purdy, I think they have more of a decision to make about the rest of the roster as well than any time during these last 5 years, because when you win, you kind of just run it back and you roll things into next season. I don't think the Niners can afford to just run it back wholly the way that they did this last summer.
No, you can't miss in the draft. You're going to have to be better on your third, fourth, or second round. You got to have to hit some guys, because I think that you look at it last Thursday night. You can say what you want. I know the weather was bad and all those different things. This team said, we're going to do one thing. We're going to show respect, and we're going to showcase a guy that we believe has been so much for this organization, Deebo Samuel. They said, let's showcase Deebo. Deebo had an opportunity last week. He was their showcase team. They targeted him. It was about, we're going to put it on you. You've been saying you want the ball. You want us to show you that we love you and we trust you. And they went to him. And unfortunately, Deebo didn't deliver. So when you have situations like that and you put the ball in someone's hand and you go to them and say, look, we're going to try to make you, we're going to let you go ahead and do what we know you can do, because you knew what he did against the Rams several years ago in the playoffs. That season got him paid. What he did for the Niners single-handedly pretty much carried that team. What he did in Green Bay at the running back position, all the gadget plays, he got rewarded. But he's at a situation now where it's like, okay, now it's like, let's see if you still can do that. And something is missing. I don't think that I think that's something they're going to turn the page. I don't think this is a guy that they will cut. I think you got to look at this situation and say, what can we get? What type of value does a Deebo bring us? Because you need a lot of help elsewhere, in my opinion. And I think that there's several guys, and it's football. I've been traded. I've been cut. Things have happened. So it's football. I get it. And my thing is like, wait, when you get an opportunity to get your money as a player, go get your chicken. Go get it. Do whatever you need to do to get it. And that's just the way this game is. And we're going to see it this offseason. But I do believe that this team is not going to go. They're not going to make Purdy the highest paid quarterback in the National Football League.
Well, as we move forward here, an hour left on the pregame show presented by Habas Law. If you've been wronged, Habas Law will fight to make it right. Call 1-800-INJURED or visit habaslaw.com. Evan Giddings and Lorenzo Neal with you. On the other side, I do want to continue to talk about Brock, but also want to get into Kyle Shanahan, because he was asked something 48 hours ago about reinventing himself. I think we've put a lot of the onus on Purdy and what his limitations are, and we can certainly continue to discuss them in the context of the team, but also where can Kyle Shanahan go from here as the Niners get set to take on his protege in Mike McDaniel and the Miami Dolphins at 125. Both teams are 6-8. Both teams are effectively eliminated. Where do the Niners go as they match up against the Dolphins at 125? Again, we got the Kickoff show coming your way next on 95.7 The Game with Evan Giddings and Lorenzo Neal. We're back after this.
Now back to the Kickoff Show on 95.7 The Game.
Oh, getting you ready for Week 16. Evan Giddings, Lorenzo Neal, Cam Williams on the Kickoff Show here on 95.7 The Game. This is from the 707 of the Comcast Business text line. This regime, they gave you Brian Hoyer, C.J. Beathard, Nick Mullins, Jimmy Garoppolo. The Niners have to pay Brock. I
agree with you. 707?
I'm with you, man.
We ain't call. Why don't y'all call us up and let me hear what you got. Let me hear you guys, because I'm with you. We are not saying Brock does not deserve to be paid. So stop, please. We're just saying there's a number. What is your number? Go ahead. And they call and give us the number that you think that Brock should get a year.
Well, 888-957-9570 is the number. I do want to also get into Kyle Shanahan. Before we do that, let's go to JJ in Concord, wants to talk about paying his guy. JJ, what's going on? You're on the Kickoff Show. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks for taking my call, guys. Merry Christmas. Happy holidays to you and your families. All right. Thank you very much. Yeah. No, and I hear you guys. I think anybody who says that you guys are dumping on Brock isn't hearing what you're saying. That's clearly not your message at all. Yeah, absolutely. But man, there's so many. You guys said it best. There's so many what ifs. There's so many what ifs, right? What if he leaves? What if he goes somewhere and he blows it up, right? I mean, and we're like, man, we had that guy. He was our guy, And I think about everything that my guy Brock Purdy has been through coming into the league. Everybody from day one. Oh, he's a nobody. He's nothing. What do we owe this guy? We've been watching some tremendous football over the last couple of years. This is definitely what I would call a one-off, But when I think about guys like Dak Prescott, what that guy's getting paid, and,
right? But okay,
showdown.
Real quick though, bro. So I'm with you because Dak got paid that. Is that merit that now we got to blow that out of water? So where are you at when it comes to that? What's good business sense and what's not?
Yeah, I mean. It's the whole what if, right? Well, what if, right? Well, and in my mind, when you look around the market and I'm like, okay, if that guy's getting paid that, then our guy should be getting paid more than that.
Right.
I mean, our guy has done more than that. Has Dak even gone past one day in the playoffs? I mean, to me, it just makes sense. If you're like, that guy, ours got us to almost the finish line, play away from the finish line. I mean, what's that worth, right? I mean,
does it set your team back though? Do you think it has set your team back? So if you pay that type of salary, how far does it set your team back? That's the question that I'm trying, and that's what me and E were trying to go, contemplate. Okay, deserve to get paid, should be better. He is better than Dak Prescott, not even close. But because you paid him that, does that mean Dak's better than Mahomes? Should Mahomes redo his now? Should Josh Allen redo theirs now? Does that, because they do these type of salaries, does that make it right?
Yeah. No, I mean, I appreciate that, JJ. Thanks for the call. I mean, I don't think it does make it right. And actually, Steve Young brought this up earlier in the week that you do risk putting yourselves into a Dallas Cowboys type situation if you pay a quarterback that amount of money. The one thing that, and I don't know if the Niners could somehow thread this needle is I do think that they're a more stable organization than the Cowboys.
I agree.
I do think they're a more stable organization than the Jaguars or the Dolphins, who they played today. I think they've shown that their ownership, their front office, and their head coach, that's at least a spine of a franchise that you can trust and rely on. But again, the question is, how much do you want to invest? Because if you go to the blackjack table, you can play a $25 hand for quite some time. But if you start to get to the big boy tables, you start paying $5,000, $10,000, $20,000 per hand, you got to hit.
Come on.
You got to win consecutively. And if you don't do it, you're going to be off that table in 5 minutes.
You can go play that $5 blackjack.
Yeah.
and you can play two hands. You can play two hands, and as long as you double. So you got to pay $10 a hand if you're playing two. Then you got to go to the $100 table. Okay, now you ain't playing 100, but you got to play 200. So that's $400 out there because you're playing two hands. Now you get to that $1,000 table. Now you ain't playing two hands. You're getting nervous because now the stakes are a lot higher. The 49ers stakes are a lot. I like that blackjack analogy, but you got me fired up. Let's go play some blackjack. and right now I'm betting on Brock Purdy, but I'm not going to play that $1,000 hand. I'm going to play that $10 hand, but guess what? I'm not just playing $10. I'm doubling up. I'm putting 40 on top of him. And because I got 40 on this side. So now guess what? My money goes further. I can play blackjack and sit at the table just a little bit longer because I'm not playing the $1,000 hand. I'm not playing the $100 hand. So now my game can last longer. I can move chess pieces around, stack my money, have an opportunity to get an easier ROI because I have more opportunities. That's all I'm saying with the Niners. If you want to go all in with Brock and make him the highest paid quarterback and pay him more than 62, guess what? Your ROI is going to be a little bit different.
Well, that's why, look, if I got $60 million, I'm sorry. I don't know if I can put it all on number 13. You know, if we're sticking with the gambling, it's like, to me, that's just a massive gamble that you might not have to even make. And the issue with this is that the Niners kind of put the cart before the horse before last Super Bowl. And we were out there in Vegas, speaking of gambling, and we listened to Jed York say that this quarterback is going to reset the market. He said it a year before he had to pay the man. And so if I'm Brock Purdy's agent, I'm throwing that back in his face all day. But if I'm the Niners, again, it's a massive swing that makes everything fall upon the shoulders of one player. And I think in general, in football, it's really hard when you put that much pressure on one player. I don't care if it's a running back. I don't care if it's a quarterback. I don't care if it's a head coach or a GM. When you have all riding on one person, there's so many different moving parts. You know better than anybody, Lo. It's like, that's one of the reasons why, as much as Josh Allen is great, he's never been to a Super Bowl. Lamar Jackson is great. He's never been to a Super Bowl. Even players in the NFC, like Jared Goff, who's been around for a long time, he's been to one Super Bowl. And it was when he had everything on a rookie contract. So just because the Niners have found their franchise quarterback doesn't mean that they should just all of a sudden go all in on him. And even if that's what the market dictates, I do think that they'll try and fight that because they're afraid of what the reality could become if they do.
I think it's very well put. Like you just laid it out, man. You know, Josh Allen's getting paid and all those different things, even though how great he is, he's never won a Super Bowl and he hasn't been to a Super Bowl. So what you're saying and how you just put that means a lot. And the Niners have to realize that and saying, hey, look, we got a guy we've been to a Super Bowl with, but how much is it? Kyle Shanahan, you said we're going to talk about, does Kyle Shanahan read, what did they ask him the question? Does he need to reinvent himself? All those different things that has to happen in order for success to get back to a Super Bowl, to win a Super Bowl, and just to be a formidable opponent in the National Football League.
I'm with you. And actually, here's what you're talking about. Kyle Shanahan, there's been a conversation about him needing to reinvent himself. That was also something Steve Young said. I think people have talked about it because, really, the lack of the Niners' points, they've gotten yards, they've gotten big games, but they haven't gotten the points that we've become accustomed to seeing from a Kyle Shanahan-led offense. He was asked about it in his press conference earlier in the week.
That's what you try to do every single week. That's what you try to always do. It's kind of like the other question when talking about schemes. You don't just say, hey, today I'm going to try to run the wishbone offense and stuff. It's what are the players that you have, what do you believe in, and what gives those guys the best chance to succeed. For a little bit here, we almost went with the running quarterback, possibly with Trey. You saw a different offense when he got out there. You see different things. You got to adjust your players. I know what I want to do. I think we got the players here to do that stuff. But reinventing yourself, as you ask, I did that having a mustache this offseason for a little bit. That's how I would look at that, and I'm totally joking. But when it comes to football's, that's why I think coaches get a little too much credit too when a really good scheme is putting the players that you have in the best chance they have to max out and do their best. And that's what we're going to always try to do, and the scheme will change with that.
I don't know about you, Lo. What I heard there was, I'm going to do what I do, and if it works, it works because it's been working for a long time. The idea of reinventing yourself it sounds a lot better. In reality, that's not really what happens.
No.
You are who you are.
You are, but I like what he was saying because you've seen when he had Trey, he said, hey, look, we're going to go run an offense. Because with Trey gave him that opportunity because he was athletic and you thought you could do that. With Brock, you can't. So I do believe that Shanahan tries to reinvent himself. I do believe that he tries to, put his athletes or the guys that he has in the best position to be successful. You look at a guy like Debo. That's why they put him in the backfield and have him motion and doing the things, the jet sweeps, all those different things. So Kyle Shanahan, when he says that, I do believe that he's true to what he's saying of trying to reinvent, not necessarily himself, but with the players that he has, reinvent certain things, because we've seen that. We saw it when he was, with the Commanders at the Washington Redskins at the time, when that's the name of them, when they had, RG3, how he put that offense together that fit what he could do. So I think Shanahan has tried that, and this year he's tried it, but it just goes to show you that the talent hasn't been there, and that's why he said coaches get too much credit. You heard what he said? He goes, coaches get too much credit when it should be the players, because of the fact he puts them in position, but right now the players aren't able to execute the positions that he's put them in for success.
Well, and that's why I think in the past, Kyle Shanahan has probably gotten too much credit. But I also think it's the same reason why this season he's gotten too much blame. You talk about putting players in a position to succeed. Let's just go back to their last game on Thursday night against the Rams. Kyle Shanahan put Deebo Samuel in a position to succeed. Deebo Samuel dropped the ball.
Yep.
If he catches that touchdown, the Niners very may well win that football game. And so I thought it was interesting that the discourse or the conversation after the Rams game was, well, Kyle Shanahan leaned too much into Deebo Samuel at the cost of his team. When in reality, if Deebo catches a pass, are we giving the credit to Deebo? Are we giving it to Kyle? Because we were killing Shanahan for the ball going too much, and I did it myself. But as I thought about it, I thought, and hearing that quote.
That was brilliant. He went to Deebo because he said, here's a guy that
he put us in a position to succeed, but the players didn't make the plays.
Exactly. And what is Deebo? And that's why, but at the same sense, when we get ready to jump on Deebo and his question, you have to be careful, because remember what Deebo happened? You talked about it with the kicker and the long snapper.
Yeah.
You go on, and now guess what? Now you've got exposed. And it's horrible, but you have to be careful sometimes how you position yourself in the things you say. Kyle Shanahan said, Deebo gives us a great opportunity to win. He's always had success against the Rams. Let's turn him loose and see what he can do. They tried. Deebo didn't deliver.
No, he didn't. And the Niners haven't delivered. That's why they're in a position where right now they're at 6-8. They got a 0.1% chance to make the postseason. They're effectively dead. And the team opposite them in the Miami Dolphins is a team that is also, in the same place for different reasons. And Miami, technically, and actually you broke this down to me earlier, they're not done. This is a game where the Niners, I think, have a lot of pride to play for, but the Miami Dolphins legitimately still have the playoffs to play for. And they need a lot of help. There's no doubt about it at 6-8, but they're not mathematically eliminated. And so I think at 125, as we, again, kind of count you down to kickoff here on the Kickoff Show, this is a game where it's not like players are just going to be going through the motions.
Right. And that's what we get to see. And that's what I'm happy that the Niners are playing this particular game. And next week you got Detroit. You're playing two teams that are fighting. One is fighting for its playoff hope, and that's Miami. And Detroit is trying to fight to keep the number one seed, because you look who's Philadelphia's right behind them, Minnesota's right behind them. So you have two teams that you're going to get their best. So this is a great opportunity. You got to hear Brock earlier talked about, hey, look, I wish I had another opportunity. I would have, did a little bit more. Now, guess what? He has the opportunity because he's playing against two teams that still have hopes to be in the playoffs. One is in, the other is fighting to stay in.
Well, and of course, you talk about the two head coaches. I think we discussed this earlier in the year, but I contend that I think Kyle Shanahan really misses someone like Mike McDaniel. And you can make the case that Mike McDaniel misses someone like Kyle Shanahan. But, offensively, to me, they're peanut butter and jelly. Mike McDaniel does a great job at designing runs, getting guys in motion, kind of taking what Kyle Shanahan built and then building upon it. Meanwhile, Kyle, I don't know how you really feel. Like, take me inside the locker room. So when you're discussing things with your head coach, your offensive coordinator, maybe your running backs coach in the room, how often are guys able to not challenge, but kind of push each other with ideas? Because I think one of the reasons why people believe that Shanahan hasn't reinvented himself, or it's because there's not a lot of people on this staff right now that can challenge him mentally, that can try and force him to think about the game in a different way. And I think that's what Mike McDaniel really did with Shanahan. Someone he obviously respects, but also someone that's creative enough, imaginative enough, and obviously smart enough to be a head coach to kind of push Shanahan to get the most out of what Shanahan can do.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And players have a lot to do with that as well. On Mondays and Tuesdays, when you talk about the run game, you the run coordinator, and they say, hey, this is our run game, and you practice on it. You don't think that Marty Schottenheimer and Cam was, our offensive coordinator? You don't think they looked at LaDainian and said, what plays do you like? Give me your plays that you like. You don't think they talked to, you don't think that Shanahan would talk to McCaffrey and say, hey, look, tell me what you like. Guys understand, and coaches like to have players' input of what they want to do and what they enjoy doing. I don't think that they come to on Monday night, friggin', they print out and they send that to Brock Purdy. Brock Purdy has the plays before Wednesday.
Yeah.
They sometimes, players and players come to that meeting with the OC and say, okay, what some of the plays you want me to keep in? What do you want here? So they have that type of influence, and that's what great teams do. I don't think that Brady didn't have the influence on the best coach, Belichick, to say, hey, this is what I like, this is what I've seen, because you respect those coaches and you respect those players that's put a lot of energy and effort into their craft. And so that's why the players have merit that the head coach look at. So, yes, I think that Shanahan is missing a lot of those components, those coaches. Also, some of those players that, you look for advice and see what they could do and see what they enjoy doing. So you have that off of Shanahan's plate, and that's why I think that you're going to see a new DC. I think I'll see a special teams coach. There's going to be a lot of turnover, I think, with the Niners team this year.
Well, and Shanahan was also asked about kind of the amount of other teams that do something similar to him, because Miami has taken it and, again, kind of transformed it, cranked it up a little bit. But is there a challenge in playing against teams that do something similar to you do, or should you be more equipped to handle that? Here's how he answered.
It just is what it is. And when they say they do it, we do it. The team's motion a lot more now. They believe in play action a lot more. I think that comes from defensive coordinators and defensive coaches pushing that on offensive guys. I think the more young guys that come in the league, that's what they see a little bit more of, and it's kind of how it goes. Like when I got in the league, you see certain things, and ran a certain offense at Houston when I was there. Went to Washington, tried to do a real similar offense, and it was totally different personnel. And I realized I couldn't run that same thing, and I had to adjust. And each year was different. Then we got Robert in there, which was more of a quarterback who had a running element. And then I had to do stuff that I'd never done before. But not because you're just reinventing yourself or trying to change the league, because you're trying to figure out what can help the guys that you have be successful. And that can change all the time depending on the player's skill set. But I'd say as a coach that if you want to make it in this league and you want to have some success in this league, you better be able to adjust to anything, or you're only going to be successful when you have the perfect situations.
Interesting. That's exactly what it's. I didn't hear that clip, but that's exactly a couple minutes ago. That's what I was telling you.
Yeah.
You saw with Robert Griffin, how he adjusted the offense and said, hey, this is what we're going to do because this guy can do this. He's going to ride the running back into the line of scrimmage. And now those linebackers and safeties are come down, and he would hit the tight end right over the top. Robert Griffin would pull the ball, run around the outside. You made guys stay at home. So Shanahan has done a great job of adjusting. And like you said earlier, it's just the players hasn't helped him either. He's put guys in position to answer the bell. Last Thursday, you talked about Debo and said, oh, yeah, but maybe Shanahan shouldn't have did that. They went to him too much. No, he wanted the ball, said nothing's wrong with me. Your captain, your leader, your guy, the guy who's carried you to an NFC championship, the guy who you've been riding with, told the world and he told people on social media, there is nothing wrong with the Debo train. Just give me the opportunities. And guess what they did? They gave him the opportunities, and he just didn't come through, unfortunately.
And in regards to Debo, Lo, I think when there's players of that ilk that have meant so much to a franchise, I don't know how you feel about this, but I do think that you kind of owe it to them to let them fail. If that is what is going to happen, you've been into battle with them so many times, you've seen them succeed so many times, to just pull the plug on a player and say, well, you know what, I think he's done, so I'm not going to give him the ball. That's not the way it goes. And if a player is final, if they're at their the end of their career, I think Debo is not there yet, but someone like, say, Kirk Cousins with the Atlanta Falcons, I think he's pretty close to done. The Falcons had to let him fail before they could officially move on from him. And I think that's what you owe players like that.
Oh, without a doubt. I think you're spot on. And that's what Shanahan did. He said, okay, Debo, we're going to showcase you tonight. Be ready to go. And you put him on notice. Hey, I want you to know, heard what you said. I'm great. We're going to give you an opportunity. Let's go make some plays tonight. It wasn't to make him fail. It was to say, okay, I hear you. I'm going to try to make you happy. I'm going to give you an opportunity. But guess what? If it was some slap saying that, a guy that was fourth receiver said this, and you knew that he hasn't done anything to merit that, he had no gravitas, you wouldn't go to that guy. You went to Debo because he's proven. And I'm not talking about Debo in a negative way, because what Debo has meant to you and what he's done for this organization and the things that Debo has done over the years, and everyone's, Debo's done. Man, Debo has been a rock for this organization, has been the man. And unfortunately, wasn't able to answer the bell, but it's not something you say, I can't stand that guy. You got to say, love him what he did, and maybe it's a time to turn the page. That's just football.
And that to me is where this season can still have some value. Again, the Niners got 3 games left, including today, about an hour away from kickoff down in Coral Gables in Miami. The Niners taking on the Dolphins, who are also 6-8. That is where the rest of this season has some value. You're in evaluation mode. You got to evaluate how far you think this team can go next season and what you need to do to get them in a position to succeed next season. That doesn't mean you start sitting guys. It looks like Dre Greenlaw is going to play today. It looks like Nick Bosa, who warmed up earlier, is going to play today, who is questionable. You still have your leaders that are going to be out there on the field. Fred Warner's been playing with a broken ankle since week 4, essentially. It's not as if you're just resting guys, but you got to figure out, all right, who's going to be the focal point of this team next year? Who's going to kind of, create the fabric of our team next season? Because I think something that is a little undervalued is the idea of finishing strong or stuttering at the end. How you finish the season can bleed into next year. And if the Niners truly believe that this is a fluke season, which I'm honestly more inclined to believe than say that, all right, this is who they're going to be from here on out. I think that a lot happened this year that did not go their way. So if they truly believe that this is a fluke, well, then they have every reason to try and fight to be a part of it next year. And that's what I'm also looking forward to seeing today. Who's going to fight on this football team? Because the one thing that I didn't see a ton of on Thursday night when they lost to the Rams, it was fight. I didn't see a lot of fight in that rain game.
Yeah, you know what? I did. And and I think you would agree here. Before Greenlaw went out, he was all over the field.
Oh, Dre,
The defense was playing with energy. They were shutting down the Rams. They were flying around. They were hitting guys. They had the Rams stifled. And then you saw Greenlaw goes out, and you just seen it kind of just start dissipate. But I saw a team that, look, when Greenlaw came out, the energy, the fans, the crowd, the way that he played, I love what Nicky Bosa said after the game. He said, this is going to find out the guys who really want to be here. I'm telling you right now, guys are going to be able to make the team, and guys are going to be off this team in the next 2 weeks. This next 2 weeks, don't be surprised if you see a guy that's been on the team just get cut, or he's not active. You're going to go through and say, okay, who wants to be here? And that's what Nick Bosa is talking about. Here's a guy that could shut it down if he wants. He says, no, I'm going to fight with you guys. And that's what you want to see these guys fight till the game, the whole season. And you got 2 more games to fight. That's what I love, that these guys are strapping it up and saying, let's go win some ball games.
Well, maybe I got stuck on a little bit of the fact that a player literally quit on the team last game, and Devondre Campbell. By the way, have you ever seen anything like that before?
That's horrible. It's horrible. For one, you knew that this was Greenlaw's job a year, 2, 3 years ago. We knew. But you came into the game and you understood they were going to start him. And then to say, hey, I'm not going to play, they would have been able to activate someone else, could have got someone off the street, could have did a lot of different things, but you took that away from the 49ers. You took that away from your brothers. You took that away from your guys, your teammates. And I was listening, people were saying that he tweeted about it earlier in the week and certain things he was saying. So there was different things that were out there, but you don't do that as a pro. You don't do that as a pro. You don't leave your brothers. You don't leave your guys on an island and do what he did. No, haven't seen that. Thought it was unprofessional, especially for a veteran type of guy, and understood what was at stake, and to quit on his team, horrible.
I think that's well put. Lorenzo Neal alongside Evan Giddings here on the Kickoff Show. We got one more segment coming up on the other side. We'll take you up until 1 o'clock, and then the Niners play at 1:25 against the Miami Dolphins here in Week 16. 2 6-8 teams trying to figure out just exactly where they stand. down the end of this season. If you want to get on the conversation, please do. I see the 415 chiming in. We'll get your text on the air on the other side. But 888-957-9570 is the number. Also the number for the Comcast Business text line. This is the Kickoff Show presented by Habas Law. If you've been wrong, Habas Law will fight to make it right. Call 1-800-INJURED or visit habaslaw.com. Evan and Lowe back with you on the other side on 95.7 The Game.
Now back to the Kickoff Show on 95.7 The Game.
Oh, Cam's keeping it real. Dude, did you know this? Cam almost got his car towed an hour ago.
No.
That's why he was running up and down.
Cam, what you doing parking in front, man? Come on, maybe tell us what's going on back there. Cam, what happened, bro?
Cam, you all right?
So where I was parked at, in San Francisco, it's free parking on Sunday, so I was safe.
Right.
So I went out there just to grab my water, and I noticed my car was gone, but I seen them doing some work with PG&E. I'm like, wait, did my car get towed? And I look down, and I see the tow truck, so I chase after the tow truck. I'm like, wait, it's free parking today. But they said it was good. All they were doing was just moving it out the way, just because there was an emergency right there.
Oh, well, wait a minute. So wait a minute. So they pulled your car, they towed it, so you run down, you trying to chase him. What was he going to put it, though? So if you don't come out, what happens, bro?
He could have put it around the corner, but luckily just some feet down the way, there was an open spot. And they were just saying, like, oh, we're just going to move right here. I was like, okay, that works.
Oh, boy.
So I was saying.
Wow, damn, I ain't mad at you. I see why you was breathing hard and tired, bro.
Yeah, you dodged a bullet this morning, Cam. Yeah. Oh, my gosh. It's like every time we get in here on a Sunday, we like to have some fun on the Kickoff Show, get you ready for the Niners. Get ready for some hard-hitting football. I didn't realize we were going to have a hard-hitting, almost losing your car conversation during the show. Cam, I appreciate you making it in.
Man.
Yeah, man. I mean, and it's funny, the one day I decided to drive, because I guess the past couple weeks I've been barding, but the one day I decided to drive, my car gets towed. But luckily, it's not gone.
No, didn't get towed yet.
Get you on a Sunday, too, bro. Man, the Sabbath day. I can't believe that on the Lord's Day.
Yeah, I don't know. Who even works on the Sabbath?
Right.
Outside of NFL players. outside of the 49ers and the Dolphins.
Well, they better work today. The Niners better work today. I know we're talking about this game and just talking about what would I like to see. I'd like to see a team like you talked about play with energy and just figure out, or going into the following season, how am I going to leave a mark on this year? Because you're really not playing for anything. You got 1% chance of making the playoffs, but you're playing against a Miami Dolphin teams that still has playoff expectations and still have a chance to get in. So how are you going to play? Because the next 2 weeks you have two opponents that are playing for way more than what you're playing for, because the Niners right now, to me and to most of the football world, you're playing for pride in the future of your resume.
Yeah, look, it's Miami today, and then you got a Monday Night Football game against the Detroit Lions, and then the last week, which I think is TBD at this point, when and where, but it's against the Arizona Cardinals down in Glendale.
Right.
So look, the Niners got 3 games left to try and salvage some of the pride left of this season. The other thing about today, which I find interesting, is how many guys, like everyone's going to play through injuries, but I think that the fact that, and you mentioned Bosa's quote about, all right, who wants to be here?
Right.
The fact that Bosa is going to play through injury today, the fact that Dre Greenlaw is back out of the field after kind of re-aggravating that calf Achilles, which of course he tore last year in the Super Bowl, like that tells me that some of the leaders on this team, there's still something left to play for because they know what they're working towards. And yes, they're compensated, they're paid to play, all the rest. But if they really wanted to, there isn't much left to play for this season. They've been in Super Bowl. They've been in NFC Championship games. They've been in bigger positions than this where their season is effectively over in Week 16. So the fact that Nick Bosa and Dre Greenlaw, two guys that have C's in and around their chest, I think that does say a lot about how the Niners are trying to use what is remaining in this season to get them mentally in the place they need to be to prepare for next year.
Yeah, I think that also Shanahan loves these guys. These are guys that you say, look at these effort guys. These guys, neither one of these guys have to play or really need to play to solidify their roster spot on this team. But here's guys that want to play. They want to play, and guess what? They want to show the other guys around them how you play, even in adversity, even when you're not playing for anything. Let me show you how hard I can play. Mm-hmm. Let me show you how I'm going to run around, fly around to the ball. I'm so happy that Nick Bosa and Greenlaw is going to play because I think it's great because now you show other guys how this game should be played when nothing's on the line but pride.
Well, and this is also what Brock Purdy said about that idea of a game being meaningless because he doesn't believe there is such a thing.
I've never played in a game where I've never tried or, like for myself, man, I love the game of football and to go out and compete at any chance I can get since I was a kid. It's always been the mindset and the case. So I don't know if I've ever played in a game that's ever been meaningless to me.
No game is meaningless. I mean, no game.
And he says that. He's just like, hey, look, I never played in a game where it's meaningless, doesn't mean anything. I think we're talking about it doesn't mean anything as far as you getting into the playoffs. So you're playing, every time you go out there, it's like saying, hey, I'm fighting a fight tonight and my title's not on the line. I don't give a dang. I'm fighting a fight tonight and I'm winning. It doesn't matter. And that's what Brock's saying. Brock's just saying, hey, look, guys, we're still playing in the National Football League. You can't say, oh, it's meaningless. I'm still getting paid. You want your check to cash the next week. So it isn't meaningless. And so that's what you want to see. You want to see what kind of effort, what kind of determination are these guys going to play with moving forward.
Well, and that's why I also think for us, the media or the fans, everyone is kind of looking at these last 3 games like, they're going to make this determination about Brock Purdy. I quite frankly think they've already made their choice.
Sure.
What we're talking about is just the number. But I don't even know if the number is going to change that much over the next 3 weeks because I think you've gotten 14, 15 games already to evaluate what you have in a season that has not gone the wrong way. So you've seen, in my opinion, so far in Brock Purdy's career, you've seen the ceiling, which is a player that can help you get to the precipice of the Super Bowl, maybe even win a Super Bowl if a couple of plays go your way. You've also seen what I think what this season has showed me about Purdy and the Niners is the floor. And what the Niners have to figure out is whatever that number they come to or determine that they want to offer to their quarterback, is that going to keep you closer to your ceiling or is it going to keep you closer to your floor? And you have to be very, very careful, obviously, with where you choose to position him. But to me, the idea that these next 3 games are going to dictate whether or not the Niners pay him or whatever they pay him, I guess I just don't buy into that.
Oh, I agree with you. We already know that number is going to probably be, I think 50, under 50 or no more than 50 or probably under 50. That's the number. Brock could go out and throw 2 interceptions per game. He's still going to get the same. He could go out and have big, huge games. I don't think it's going to change a lot. I think that number, they're already looking at it. They're saying, hey, look, what are we going to do? And I think you look at the front office, they're just looking at this team and say, how are we going to take the 49ers and make this team and this organization better? And let's start with Brock because we owe him and we know that we want this guy to be here for the next 4 or 5 years.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look, the Niners, I don't know if it's because, like, you were covering this team back in 2020 after the 2019 Super Bowl, and whether, I don't know if people necessarily felt then, Lo, like that was a team that was done, like 2019 was a fluke. But the Niners have showed you over the past 5 seasons that they, with different moving parts, can find ways to, what everyone wants Kyle Shanahan to, sort of reinvent themselves. They have their structure, they have their brain trust, and finding new players and also core members that they want to keep. I don't know how far this team is away, which kind of brings us to somewhat of our final conversation for the show as we take you up until 1 o'clock here on the Kickoff Show. But what I am curious to know is where you think the Niners both fit in the NFC now, but also even looking ahead perhaps towards next season, where you think they fall. Because I don't think they're as far away as people believe them to be. This season, they're in the bottom half. I mean, they have not played very well whatsoever. But I don't know if I'd consider them going into next season as one of those bottom half teams.
Yeah, here's the deal. Going to next season, they're not going to be ranked over Seattle. They're not going to be ranked over the Rams. So in your division, you're probably going to be second or third. I don't know if you're going to be last, but you're not going to be first and you're not going to be second. And if you lose to Arizona the last week of the season, you'll probably come out and be the last in your conference. So I don't think this Niner team is, the one of the best teams in the NFC. You look at Philly; they're not with Philly. They're not with Green Bay. We saw what happened when they played Green Bay. They're not with the Detroit. When you think about the NFC, you cannot sit here and think that this Niner team is a top 5 or top 7 teams in the NFC right now.
I mean, the team that I guess, to me, I kind of think about them trying to sort of, morph themselves into come next year is a little bit like Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay's got, I think, a more physically talented quarterback than the Niners do in Baker Mayfield, but he's not a guy that if you just said, like, who's your best quarterback in the league? Baker Mayfield doesn't necessarily come to mind.
No.
He's a good one.
Right.
But he's not that guy. They got a lot of veteran players. Mike Evans, Chris Godwin will be back next year. Pieces on defense that have been around, the Vita Veas, right. Devin Whites. They have players that have played in big games before, but they're not a team that I think people are going to consider a perennial powerhouse heading into next season or even this season, even though they took the Detroit Lions down to the wire last year in the playoffs. I think they're a dangerous team, and that's to me what the Niners, I think, have to sort of figure out if they can become. I don't think anybody's going to consider this team a front runner going into next year. They're not going to be the favorites.
Can they beat the Commanders?
Can they be a dangerous team?
Are they going to be more dangerous than the Commanders next year? Just
Probably
right now.
not.
And that's where you have to. That's because you got to realize Green Bay, Detroit, Philadelphia, friggin' Minnesota. Those are that's the standard now. And the Rams, trust me, the Rams figured that the Rams were in a fire sale. Think about what the Rams organization. You got to look at and really think about what the Rams did. The Rams were a sieve. Those first 4 games are like, okay, what's going on? They were thinking about trading Cooper Kupp. Now they're keeping. Think about what the offensive line. They got a running back now. Look at the Rams organization. The Rams already went through their rebuilding. They're one of the youngest teams in the NFL. Take away Stafford. So you think about where the Rams are at, and you think of where the Niners are at. The Niners need work, and that's the whole thing that I'm saying. So you can go with the quarterback. And if this is what you're going to do, and you say, okay, we're going to build through the draft and say, okay, we're going to try to acquire more draft picks, try to build through the draft. Can Purdy, is this the direction you want to go? Or do you say, do we keep bringing him pieces to keep the game going and we be a competitive team, stay competitive? Or do we say, no, let's sell out. This guy can take us to the next level. I don't think that Purdy's that type of quarterback. And I think if you asked him, that's not what he is. And that's not who he is. And I don't think that's what the Niners want him to be. So that's the part that I'm saying you have to be careful when it comes to how you want to structure this thing to make sure you can compete. Because if you're trying to get back to the playoffs and trying to get back to, one of the better teams to be, like you said, to be a team that's going to get to the playoffs and be a threat in the playoffs, you're not there right now. You're not there.
No, and the other part that comes with money is expectations. And by the way, shout out to the 925. Love the show, guys. I'm a Fins fan of the Bay. All my Niner buddies seem overly confident in this one. Shout out to you, Ryan. Stay strong, buddy. I actually do like the Dolphins in this game. But it's mostly because they got more to play for. The thing about Purdy, though, is I don't care what number they come to. It could be 30 million, it could be 40, it could be 50, it could be 60, whatever it is. There's going to be an expectation placed on him next season. And even though the number doesn't effectively kick in until the year after all the rest, people have already been putting $60 million expectations on Brock Purdy this year. So imagine what happens if and when he's paid whatever the number is next season. There's not going to be any slack that is cut for this kid. And it's because of what you're talking about, Lo, in reference to the NFC. You look at Green Bay. They paid their quarterback. Jordan Love looks like he's up to the task. Detroit even paid Jared Goff. He's a veteran guy, but he looks like someone that's going to be there and is going to help them compete for quite a few years. Philadelphia has already paid their guy. And even though there's some kind of internal strife that's a little concerning, they clearly are able to fight through it and win. And you look at Washington. They got a bright young stud. There's a lot of other good quarterbacks in the NFC that might not be the Mahomeses, the Allenses, the Lamar Jacksons, but there's a lot of good young quarterbacks that Brock Purdy is going to be compared to when he makes that kind of money.
And I'm going to ask you right now, if you said, okay, Brock Purdy's going to take this show on the road, where? So if you said, hey, let's just let him hit the free agent market, do you look at him to say, okay, the Raiders are going to jump in line and say, I'm going to give you $70 million a year? Do you think the Raiders would pay Brock Purdy $62 million? I'm going to tell you right now, slim to none, and none has left the building. The Raiders would not get paid Brock Purdy that type of money because he would not take the Raiders to the next level. You know that. I know that. The Raiders does not have enough running back. They don't have enough receiver. They got a great tight end. They don't have the weapons. Could Brock Purdy do that team justice? Would, for $72 million, what would he do? That's the question. So you go around and you say, are you going to take him? Are you going to take him over Kyler Murray? Maybe. But you put Kyler Murray in this offense with the receivers and the speed that what he brings to Shanahan's offense, How does he look in this offense with Shanahan's, with receivers, the perimeter, the running game, how you can move the pocket? How does he look in Shanahan's offense? So when you're thinking about Brock Purdy, and that's the deal when you're saying, okay, let's pay with the big money. Who is lined up? Is it Arizona? Is it Jacksonville? Does Minnesota? Chicago's already got their guy. So is it Cleveland? Is Brock going to go and Cleveland's going to be the team that pay? Because it's not going to be the Steelers.
No.
So who is the team? Give me a handful of teams in your opinion that he's going to go and demand that type of money.
Well, the issue that any quarterback, honestly, this offseason is going to run into, and it is how it works, right? If you have a good quarterback, you keep him. And generally, that means you're a good team. But this year, the teams that need quarterbacks this offseason are the Raiders, obviously.
Right.
Tennessee.
Yep.
I mean, even a team like New England is not going to move off of Drake May. Jacksonville cannot move off of Trevor Lawrence.
Right.
Cleveland cannot move off of Deshaun Watson. Maybe if the Jets decide to move Rodgers, but they wouldn't swap out, I think, Rodgers for, say, Brock Purdy or a player like him.
You think Purdy wants to go to New York and deal with that media? You think they're going to love this old farm boy that's driving a John Deere? He's just going to come to New York and own a tractor? You think they're going to be like, hey, Purdy's coming to New York. This place is made in New York City. Do you think the media, if he goes cold and throwing the ball in that weather, his shoulder, his elbow, all the stuff that's going on, and he'd have to go to New York and play in that weather? Come on. Purdy's not doing that. Purdy's a smart guy. Purdy's a very smart guy. There's a lot of things I don't think this guy would do.
The one team that I think actually could be a location for any quarterback that's looking for a new destination this offseason, I think is Indianapolis. And I don't know if it would be someone like Purdy because he's still relatively young in his career and all the rest, but I don't know how much Shane Steichen believes that Anthony Richardson is the guy, because you talked about it. Just because the front office drafts a guy and says this is our dude doesn't mean the head coach has to use him. And he's already benched Richardson once this year for a 38-year-old and Joe Flacco. And that I could see being a team that's, all right, we're 6-8, we're on the verge of the postseason. If we didn't have this first or second year player, we might have won a game or two more. That's a team where I could legitimately see maybe it's Kirk Cousins, maybe it's Aaron Rodgers, or even in this hypothetical, if Brock Purdy said, what could you pay me? I think that might be a team that would very highly consider him.
Yeah, that's you know what, when you look at like that, yeah, they probably would.
But that's kind of the only one.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Just not a lot of chairs.
Yeah,
there's just not a lot of chairs. I don't know if you look at the Tennessee Titans and say, God, would the Titans go with the guy like Purdy and that
would
weather?
Get mauled there.
That's what I'm saying. So it's like Purdy wants to be here.
Yeah.
When we're not trying to run Purdy out here. And I think we're overdoing about how much money he wants, because I don't think that's important. I think it's his agent. Agent's going to have to say, look, I'm going to save you from yourself. You're going to take this money, because Purdy's that's not why he loves football. But I don't think there's a better place for Purdy than here in San Francisco.
No, and I don't think that there's necessarily a better quarterback, unless there's an unforeseen guy out there. I don't know that there's a better quarterback that they can get this offseason than Brock Purdy. Even Aaron Rodgers is a player that intrigues me, because he would have basically 1 year left, and then you could decide where you want to go. But at age 42, an Achilles tear, I think he's been good this season, not great with the Jets, but I don't know how much he makes you better. You know what I'm saying? I think Brock Purdy, at this stage in his career where Rodgers is in his career, can give you that similar level of production. So I'm 100% with you. To me, they marry this summer. Brock Purdy is best for the Niners. The 49ers are obviously best for Brock Purdy, and they figure out a way to get it done. Because the other part of it, too, is I don't think the Niners can afford to draw out another long contract negotiation the way they did and have seemingly. I think they got to do business differently also.
I totally agree. I think that when you think about the quarterback, we know it's important. How do we know it's important? It's playing out right in front of us. You look at a Philadelphia Eagles team up by 14. All of a sudden, Jalen Hurts gets injured. Now the Commanders are beating them. It goes to show you today, guess what? It just goes to show you that, Saquon Barkley, he probably won't get the MVP because of the fact you had, darn near 100 yards in the first half. But now when your quarterback went out, when you have a chance to take over and be the guy because you're playing against some young and upcoming Commanders team, Look what their quarterback has done since the number one quarterback for the Philadelphia goes out. So we understand the importance of a quarterback. We understand what it means to your team and your organization. I just know that Shanahan, look what he's done. And people will say, oh, if Purdy would have been playing when Jimmy G was here, they would have won a Super Bowl. But that just goes to show you what Shanahan and what they were able to do with just an average quarterback, a below average quarterback in Jimmy G. He got him to a Super Bowl. So when we say, oh, well, Purdy's, but look what Jimmy G did. And everyone said, well, Jimmy G got him to a Super Bowl. Come on. It's the farthest thing. It's a farce, but that's how people view this league. And it's unfortunately at times that's the perception and it's not reality.
Well, and I think that, context matters. Like, yes, Jimmy Garoppolo was the quarterback for the Niners when they made the Super Bowl, but Brock Purdy did far more in those playoff games than Jimmy Garoppolo was ever asked to do.
Agreed.
And I think that's where you hear Kyle Shanahan, that quote that we played about him, not necessarily reinventing himself, but more trying to maximize the players on his roster. Like, those teams with Garoppolo were made to not feature Garoppolo, and Shanahan figured out a way to win in spite of that. Now, I think partially because of necessity, not having as many great players or maybe some aging players, he has to feature Brock Purdy more. And I think that's why he's also put a lot more on his plate. Brock has not been great this season by any stretch, but I think that Shanahan is also looking at the future and saying, if this is going to be the guy that, whatever number we come to, if I'm going to be stuck with this dude, if I'm going to be married to this guy for the next 4 or 5 seasons, I got to start putting more on his plate. That's asking him to run more. That's asking him to drop back. That's asking him to do more advanced things that are probably a little bit too much for him at this stage in his career, but the Niners can be better for that down the line.
Yeah, and I don't think you ask him to do that. I don't think you need him to do that if you have the right weapons. And that's why I'm on the side of saying, get him the right people around him. Now you don't have to say, hey, you got to go run and pick up these first downs. We got to ask you to throw more deep balls, because we've seen his arm strength and it's not there. But the intermediate game, he's lights out, unbelievable. So you don't need him to be able to take all the shots. You got to be able to get him by scheme. And Shanahan and him, he works great in this offense because he executes it at a very, very high level. And that's why you want him in this offense. And they'll figure this thing out. I think we're just analyzing this thing and saying, hey, look, here's a number. You're not going to go over this number. And maybe they will. Man, guess what? If they do, then they go over it. And you see then what happens. Are they going to be able to still be able to get the guys that you want in free agency? So I just don't think they will be able to. I don't think they'll go over the number. But if they do, we're still going to talk 49ers. We're still going to be able to say, look, then someone's going to have to step up. These guys that didn't step up last year, hopefully they figure a way to step up this year, because you put a lot of money in this quarterback position. Your receivers better, have a bounce back year, because we already know who he is, and you can't expect for this guy to all of a sudden change and become, Josh Allen or Mahomes. That's not who he is. That's not who he's going to become. He is Brock, and he's a good, fine quarterback, but you can't ask this guy to continue to do more, because right now we've seen it this year, and he hasn't been able to do it.
And we'll find out what he can do today. Again, just about a half hour from kickoff, 1:25, Niners and Dolphins. And, of course, you can catch us on Overtime after the whistle. It's going to be Mark Grandy, Kyle Madsen, Sterling Bennett, as always, with you on Overtime on 95.7 The Game. Lo, by the way, so you're going to be doing post-game as well. Where can the people catch you?
Yeah, KPIX, I'll be doing a little post-game today, a little TV, and then I'll be hanging out kind of with you this week, too, a little 95.7 The Game.
That's right.
Coming in from 6 to 2 to try to make it happen. But I want to come in this week and be able to talk about, hey, the Niners found a way to beat the Miami Dolphins. The master beat the student. Kyle Shanahan going against a student, his protege. What is he going to do? Both these guys know what they like to do as as coaches. Who's going to out-scheme who? You have two quarterbacks that are similar, comparable, both short in stature. Both are not necessarily 6'2", 6'3" guys. They're guys that's overachievers. They're guys that play well in their system. Which one of these guys is going to execute the best in their system? I'm asking which quarterback, because we believe that Brock's better. Today, you get to go one-on-one, and this is a measuring stick, and I know Brock understands that here's this guy who's got paid, just got a contract, who's been injury-prone, but this is what he's done for his team. Can Brock Purdy beat this guy head-to-head? Because both these teams have some injuries. Who is going to be the most efficient quarterback today?
And a great place to leave it. I do want to thank everybody that has chimed in today, that has called in, that has texted, and we appreciate the conversation as always. Also, shout out to the YouTube chat powered by First NorCal Credit Union. Big thank you to Cameron Williams. Go get your car after the show. We love you for it. Big thank you to Lorenzo Neal. My name is Evan Giddings saying so long. You've been listening to the Kickoff Show presented by Habas Law. If you've been wronged, Habas Law will fight to make it right. Call 1-800-INJURED or visit habaslaw.com.